Welcome back, baseball fans, to another elimination video. We're eliminating the Houston Astros. What you're looking at is last year, very close to this year. Last year, they got knocked out in the wild card round with a 23-20 record. This year, they did a little better, got to the divisional round and got knocked out. Wanted to look at the comparison of the 2 years. The Astros at 274 in the year 2021 with a 3.88 ERA. That's a high batting average and also a high ERA. Looking at the stars of this team, at the very top of the list, a couple fluky journeymen. Jose Martinez. Marty Martinez was a utility player who hit a 300 card, so that makes a little bit of sense. But Bob Watson was hitting 324 with just 2 homers, 16 RBI. Cedeno, 308 with 6 homers, 32 RBI, 11 stolen bases. And then I'll scroll down a little bit. Jimmy Nguyen had 6 homer, but he had 417 on base, which is nice. Joe Morgan only hit 249, but he had 18 stolen bases. Jose Cruz struggled a little bit, and the bottom guys not so much anyway. Edwards and McCraw are platoon players. But the high batting average, because you got the those batting averages at the very top, helped a lot in that. And so good hitting. They scored 219 runs. They only gave up 184, which is nice. That's a plus 35. Indicating this is a good team, and they got some bad luck and only went 23-20. Pitching wise, Denny LeMaster went to the All-Star game 8-0, 93 innings, 2.88 ERA, 125 WHIP. He was their All-Star pitcher. But Larry Dierker and LeMaster were 1-2 in this timeline, and Dierker boasts 8 complete games in 112 innings. Does just as good, but got 5 losses through bad luck. Necro's card. Necro was just ordinary in the early 70s, late 60s. Didn't really start turning it on until the mid to late 70s. And there's that Jim Merritt. I talked about him in the pregame. That he was just, he was a number 4 starter as a 20-game winner. And that's a look. And you see the bullpen numbers are high. That's a look last year. Now let's take a look at this year for your Astros of 2022. Batting average fell 20 points, but ERA dropped 40 points as well. Hey, your team leader in hitting, here's a surprise. Roger Metzger, your Gold Glove shortstop, a 1-14. He overachieved to a 315 batting average. He actually didn't even play every day. They sat him on the bench often because of his bat, and turns out they probably should have just left him in there the whole time with that 315 average. Bob Watson's up there with a big average again, but he only had 2 homer and 20 RBI. 366 on base is nice. Joe Morgan went to the All-Star game this time around because he improved his batting average. Also 527 and 21 steals. And then the averages start to drop a bit. And then you got to scroll down. Jim Nguyen is only hitting 243, and his on base is 344. Good for most players, but for Jim Nguyen, we expect a higher on base. And then you got Cesar Cedeno. Had a really tough year. Hit 217 with a 295 on base. Trouble finding where to put all these guys in the lineup. You have a bunch of guys who could lead off. You could have Morgan could lead off, Nguyen could lead off, Cedeno could lead off. They could all bat cleanup. They could all bat third, second, or fifth. You could put them anywhere, and just trying to find the right combination just didn't work too much. Bottom 2 hitters, Duncan and McCraw, no big deal. They weren't full-time players. The pitching got a lot better. Now, LeMaster, unfortunately, they didn't need his 8-0 this year. He went to the bullpen as a long man, which is fine, just to keep his career going. It was Dierker improving on a year ago with 11 wins. You got Eddie Watt did a great job as a closer. Jim Ray, who was a closer last year, did a great job as a setup guy. So the bullpen improved a lot. Jack Billingham was solid with a 3.31 ERA. Even Ron Cook in the bullpen wasn't as bad as we first thought. Watt, Ray, Cook, and LeMaster in the bullpen only lost 1 game. They were 4-1 in the bullpen. Dierker was the difference for the team, 6 over 500. Dierker and Watt. Jim Merritt was 2-6, but his ERA and WHIP were pretty good, 378 and 128. And Ken Forsch. So this is the Houston timeline, and if they want to run this back in the future, you know, they can hang on to Jack Billingham, Dennis Menke, and Joe Morgan. They can, you know, hold on to that and don't do that trade until we're ready for the 72, 73, 74, 75 season. So they can keep those guys for one more year. Let's see if they do. Let's take a look now at the Houston Astros stack here. We're going to pull out their 8 1970 players. And not too, well, we're going to have to make some decisions on some certain players here. And you see the players involved that we're talking about, or a couple of those guys are part of the red trade, but the Astros have to be determined if they're going to make the deal with the Reds. They need to steal from the Reds and not just break even. That's my opinion. Just let time go by and do it the proper way when the cards are going to the appropriate teams. Interesting group of guys there. Now, in this era, the Dodgers are going to be ascending, the Giants are going to be falling, and we don't know what the Padres are doing. So it's really up to the Astros to keep the Dodgers honest. Remember, the Cincinnati Reds and the Dodgers are not in the same division anymore. They're going to split 6 hitters and 6 pitchers next year. So Edwards is coming back as a catcher. That's a decent enough card for this era. You know, you're not going to be Johnny Bench. There's only one of those. Watson could look. I mean, he's definitely playing every day. But the question is it going to be in the outfield, first base, catcher, or DH? And that is to be determined, depending on who they get as his teammates. We do have a couple good, slick fielding infielders. Raiders at 2, kills lefties, and of course Metzger said led the club at hitting, which is strange because he only hits 250 on his card. And this is the Cedeno card. You have to assume he's going to come back next year and tear it up because he really struggled this year, hitting 217. And you also have Jose Cruz with a really nice card with the on-base power, lefty, can hit lefties, good range and arm. And he was actually a Cardinal, but he's going to play. He's going to run the whole timeline with the Astros. So that's a pretty good group there. It's good enough to compete with the Dodgers for the West. So now we got to figure out the tough decisions for those 1970 players. All right, baseball fans, let's see what the Astros do with their 8 guys. They ended up getting Dave Duncan to be a platoon catcher in the offseason, which was a nice pickup, though he wasn't associated with the Astros at the time. He would have been on Oakland. You see him with an Oakland hat there. He'd be, hanging around Tony La Russa. La Russa was on Oakland early on there. Pitching coach for the Cardinals and A's. So it's all with Oakland, Cleveland, Baltimore, and his career ends in 76. But he's got some nice power for a catcher here in this timeline. His 70 card is up, but his power numbers go up the next 4 years. He does it with Oakland and for Cleveland. Now, of course, with Oakland, everybody's been playing keep away with their players. We've seen teams hoard Oakland players so that they don't get them because of the dynasty. We saw Mike Epstein not get to Oakland and stay with the Washington Senators. We saw Don Mincher not go to Oakland. For the longest time, Ken Holtzman didn't even get there until he finally moved him in the past season. So he's an all-star next year with Oakland. So, yeah, if Oakland wants to get on the phone and give up a ton, they can get him for their 253 hitting catcher. But right now, Houston's going to keep him. No reason to give guys away who are good like that. I'm going to put trade here, though, because they'll certainly listen. They do have one catcher. They have John Edwards, a left-handed hitting catcher, which is also great news, because you can get any right-handed hitting catcher to platoon with him. And frankly, Duncan might be too good for this Houston team, because you can get much for him, and you can get any scrub of right-handed catcher to platoon with Edwards. So that is a good situation for the Astros to check out. All right, the next player is Greg Goosen. And double S. E-N. Try again. double S E, and there he is. And you don't have to go any further, because 1970 is the end of Goosen's career. But we'll take a peek anyway, because he was a Seattle Pilot, was a Met as well. Real shame that we didn't get a printout of this Seattle Pilot card of 69 and 157 plate appearances, 309, 385, 597, 982. We don't get this card in the first reissue 69 set. So hopefully if you're playing a newer reissue, because they do multiple reissues, Strat-O-Matic does, you'll get to use this Greg Goosen card, because that's the best year. And I had to use this 1970 card, which wasn't very good. Anyway, his career is over. Thank you, Greg Goosen, for contributing at least a year to my league. Next up, Tom McCraw. And, you know, it's just, he played a dozen years. Now, he is a good rangy first baseman, and he's got a little bit of speed, and as a left-handed batter, he can hold his own against left-handed pitching, but the production is just not much to warrant being an everyday first baseman. That's a long timeline. You know, with the White Sox, then the Senators, then Cleveland and California. And so these are the years that are up for bid. We just used a card that in this 70 season that hit 220 with a 592 OPS for the Houston Astros, which is really bad numbers for first base. Probably the worst numbers of all my first basemen. But the Astros used it, and the Astros, well, they played well this year. They went to the divisional round because they used McGraw as defense and an extra left-handed bat. However, he's not associated with Houston. Similar situation to Dave Duncan, but Duncan's going to present more value. This guy is clearly a guy you put on waivers. To get waivers, you have to have a card in the first year, which is 71. So, is this card made for Washington with 234 plate appearances? It should be, but let's double check. We're going to go to the roster sheet for the Washington Senators and see if they made a card for Tom McCraw. And the infielder, there he is, they made him as an outfielder. So he qualifies for waivers. So it's reasonable to assume, much like the Astros found this guy as a free agent on the street to fill in a hole in their roster, another team could do the same thing next year. And Tommy could fill in a hole on a team that has a bad defensive first baseman who's right-handed or something like that. Or they need a little bit of speed. So his career's not over, but he's on waivers. All right, the next player, and a future Red, Dennis Menk, part of the Morgan deal. And 62 to 74, started with Atlanta, Houston. This guy's a fun player. He walks, he plays multiple positions, has a little bit of power even. Had 20 homers in 64. 10 and 13 in 69 and 70, and a couple All-Star appearances. MVP votes in 69. So he has one more year in Houston, then he goes to Cincinnati. The batting average goes down, but the on-base percentage does not. He still has an on-base over 60 points over the batting average, which is something I look for. So you see 246 plus 60, 306. He's above that. 233 plus 60, 322. He's above it there. He's above it there in 73, and I've seen this card, this 73 Cincy card. He's hitting 191 with a 368 on base. This is a fun card. I'd love to get this card in the league, any of these cards. And I really like this guy he's just a great Strat-O-Matic player because he's so versatile. So we talked along about Joe Morgan sticking around Houston. I think Menk does as well. But again, the phone will ring. You know the phone's going to ring. The Cincinnati Reds are going to call Houston and bug them about Menk, Billingham, and Morgan. And yeah. And that's where we are now at. Alphabetically, after Menk comes the first Morgan in the list. And I'm going to call, in my timeline, from between 69 and 84, Joe Morgan's got the best individual card with that 76 card, I believe, or is it 75? 76, right? 76 Morgan, is that the one? The one with 27 home runs? Yeah, this one. Yeah, this is the best Strat-O-Matic card. I know George Brett hit 390 in 1980, but he's not a double-A stealer, and he's not a 1E6, and he doesn't play second base. So I'm going to get, yeah, if I had to give an award to greatest Strat-O-Matic card over a period of 16 years, and folks, if you want to chime in, have at it. But I'm going to call the 1976 Joe Morgan the greatest Strat-O-Matic card of the 70s, at least. Yeah, and we're not there yet, and here's where we're at. 1971. So, the Astros can say, okay, well, his average drops a little bit, and he leads the league in triples. And he's got a 757 OPS. So, yeah. The rest of the baseball world is saying, please, Houston, please don't even think of getting him on Cincinnati sooner than necessary. Because you're just going to ruin the Strat-O-Matic League, because the Reds are going to win 2 or 3 World Series if you give him more time with the Reds. So, yeah, for now, he's a keeper. And, of course, you got to write the word trade next to that name, obviously. Okay, speaking of trades, oh boy, folks, here comes another one. The toy cannon, Jim Nguyen. I mean, my goodness, what if you held on to these guys the entire decade? Houston, you held on to Morgan, Nguyen, and Cedeno the whole decade. What could have been? Jimmy Nguyen. Oh, the Dodgers are going to love him in 1974. He has 3 more years in Houston. A couple aren't so good. He kind of alternates, a bad year with a good year. But 72 Nguyen is good. I think you got to do it. You cannot give him to the Dodgers that easily, at least. I know the 74 year is coming up, and he'll get 5 MVP votes for the Dodgers, but he's your division rival, and you've got to prevent this stuff from happening. We've got to somehow change history, or at least limit history, to do it in the appropriate year. As a matter of fact, I'm going to erase the trade thing for the moment, because I don't think the Reds are going to break the bank. They like Tommy Helms at second base. I think they're going to run it back 1 more year, because they got Tommy Helms' 71 card and he's a 1 at second base. I just think Houston's going to keep their guys as long as they can keep their guys, and then just let history take over. And then Nguyen will go to the Dodgers in 74, and Morgan's going to go to the Reds in 72. So, all right, 2 pitchers. Jim Merritt. And he was a Red. Common theme here, huh? He did not pitch for the Astros. He was a Twin, then the Reds and the Rangers. He's an All-Star in 70, 4th in Cy Young voting, and then got MVP votes. 20-game winner, but again, he had a 4.08 ERA, so that's why the Reds didn't protect him, along with the fact that the Reds were such a great team. They had too many guys they wanted to protect, and Merritt was not one of them. So 4th in Cy Young votes, but look at the 4.08 ERA and the 1.28 WHIP. Those are kind of ordinary, really. Nothing really special about that. And the Reds recognized that it wasn't special. And then after that, you see, he's just okay. Nothing more than being just okay. And with 4 keepers, I think the high floor of Merritt, Houston got the high floor of Merritt without that low ceiling, as I like to say. So they're going to put him on waivers and let somebody else take a chance at that with that 71. Because in 71, he's 1-11 with a 4.37 ERA. So that card's going to be kicked around during the draft a lot. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes to an expansion team. And the last pitcher is Ron Cook. And only has a short little career. with the Astros. Had a nice year in 70. He only has 25 innings in 71, so if they made his card, he can go on waivers. Otherwise, the 71 Astros, let's take a look. Looking for Ron Cook here. And Culver, Durker, no, he's not a regular pitcher. Is he an extra pitcher for Houston? Larry Howard, LeMaster, Martinez, Mayberry. No, his career's over. So they didn't print the card for Ron Cook. And look at that, folks. When you break down the numbers, you have 4 keepers, 2 waivers, and 2 retires. That's the appropriate amount to happen. So they actually could keep Dave Duncan, which we talked about, instead of giving him to Oakland. Menk, Morgan, and Jim Nguyen. Put a couple guys on waivers. This is the perfect number. They could go into the season this way. They'll get on the phone with Dave Duncan. Maybe they'll trade and find a different keeper, somebody different to keep and improve the roster. If you're trading a keeper that's good, what you do is you usually improve a different part of your team. So if I had to look at a current player and say, who do we want to move on from and improve that's currently on the roster, a lot of these, well, it could be like Denny LeMaster. We saw his card isn't all that great. Eddie Watt's got a nice card. Jim Ray's got a nice card. Forsh is going to be an Astro. We like Durker and Billingham. Watson. Johnny Edwards, a left-handed catcher. Yeah, I mean, you could trade Johnny Edwards and then just make Dave Duncan your full-time catcher as an option. That's it tonight for eliminating the Houston Astros. Hope you're enjoying these eliminating videos, and we'll see you next time.